All right, welcome back to 6.3. We're down on the second part of this, and we're going to continue our discussion with the binomial distribution, looking at shape, center, and variability. Some interesting formulas that come out of this, so we want to jot those down as we go. The table shows the possible values. We did that typo blood, we had 5 children, 25%. So this gives us the probability of distribution of all of those different possibilities that we did. So we're able to do that. Now, as you take a look at the binomial distribution with if n equals 5 and p equals 0.25, we can kind of see if we describe the shape, it's going to be skewed to the right. All right, now if we did this one where, let's say that p was 0.51, yeah, we're going to see it's roughly symmetric is what we're going to see. And then as the probability goes to 0.8, we're going to see it skewed to the left. So you can kind of see some connections there as we're looking at the shape of those binomial distributions. And so with this, if a count x of successes has a binomial distribution with the number of trials n, okay, so we had our probability of p, the mean, the expected value of that, we can simply do by taking the n times the p. So take that number of trials times the probability of success. That's how you find the mean. Pretty easy. All right, standard deviation, what you're going to do is you're going to take that, how you find the mean, n times p, and then you're going to multiply that by the probability of failure, in other words, 1 minus p. Then you can take the square root of that. So those are some formulas here that we should get used to. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that there's only work for the mean and standard deviation for binomial distributions, okay? So let's assume that each of the 21 students in Mr. Horgarth's AP Stats class who did the bottled water versus tap water activity was just guessing. So there was a 1/3 chance of each student identifying the cup containing bottled water correctly. Now, X is the number of students who made a correct identification. At the right is a histogram. Looks roughly symmetric, right? And of the probability of that distribution. Now we want to calculate, interpret the meaning of x. Well, very easily we can see, okay, do we have our number of trials n? Yeah, we do. We have 21, and the probability was 1/3. So yeah, our mean of this binomial distribution is 7. And so if all the students in Mr. Hogarth's class were just guessing and repeated the activity many, many, many times, the average number of students who guessed correctly would be about 7 out of that 21. That's what we'd see there. Yeah, kind of interesting. Now, the next part is that we want to calculate and interpret the standard deviation. Now, again, get used to not just finding the standard deviation number, but also what does it tell us? So now with the calculations that we have, we're going to take our n times p, so that's the 21 times 1/3, and then this is going to be the 2/3. Okay, these two numbers right there and there should always add to 1. So if we do that correctly and put it in, it's 2.16. So now, interpreting that, that's the key here, guys. That's where you make the money on the test. If all the students in Mr. Hogarth's class were just guessing and repeated the activity many times, the number of students who guessed correctly would typically vary by about 2.16 from that mean that we figured out of 7. All right, so the nice easy formula to use, we'll just get some practice. Don't cheat yourself out of those exercises, guys. Do those. That's how you really put those in and solidify your knowledge there. All right, now basically almost all real-world sampling, such as taking a simple random sample from a population of interest, usually it's done without a replacement. So as we know, that kind of violates the independent condition of the binomial. So we're saying, oh, well, maybe it's not a binomial because we're violating the bins, right? Just the independent part. Well, here's the idea. When the population is just so much larger than the sample, a count of successes in a simple random sample of size n has an approximately normal, approximately binomial distribution. It does have that. So here's what we say. This is the 10% condition. When taking a random sample of n from a population of size n, capital N, right, we can use the binomial distribution to model the count of successes in the sample as long as that sample size n is less than 10% of the population size. So that's why we call it the 10% condition. Okay, if we're taking a sample that's less than 10% of the entire population, we can forego that independent idea and know that we can use the binomial distribution. Okay, so that's kind of the safety net there. All right, so we have the story here. 500 U.S. teenagers aged 14 to 18. Subjects were asked a variety of questions about personal finance. One of the questions asked whether teens had a debit card. And so let's say that 12% of teens have debit cards. X is the number of teens in a random sample of size 500 who have a debit card. Now, the question is, why can we model X with a binomial distribution, even though we're not doing replacement. Well, we know that 500 clearly is less than 10% of all U.S. teenagers. So we know that that's the case. Yeah, we know that. All right, so let's use that binomial distribution now. So again, using what we just have figured out here, we can use that binomial distribution, use that calculator. Remember, the two things we have to know are the number of trials and the probability. We want to know what's the probability that we have 50 or less teens have cards. So again, make sure we're going to use the cumulative binomial distribution here, probability. So we're going to use 500 trials. That's the n, right? P is going to be 0.2. Use the x of 50. Use the CDF, right? And so we're going to see that that's about 9.32, 9.3% is what we would say the probability is. All right. Now, this next part may not be required for the AP exam, but I think it's good for us to go through. We'll talk about what p-hat is in Chapter 7 soon, but I think it's worthwhile to do. This is an appropriate time to bring this in. So what happens here is we're going to talk a little bit about the normal approximation to binomial distributions. What we notice here is that as n gets bigger, as we increase that sample size of trials and such, what we notice is that we get closer and closer to a normal distribution is what happens there. So when n is large, we can use normal probability calculations to approximate this. So remember, that's our z-scores here, remember? All right, so now the next part here is what we have what's called the large counts condition. All right, now if x is the successes, okay, with n trials and successes p, the large counts condition says that probability distribution of x is approximately normal if we take n times p, if that's bigger than 10 or equal to 2 or bigger than 10, and then n times the probability of failure, okay, is greater than or equal to 10. So the expected number, the counts of successes and failures, is at least 10 or more is what we have there, okay? So let's take a look at what we're talking about here. Again, we looked at those types of situations. In the survey, okay, same thing that we had before with the teenagers, okay? Yx can be approximated by a normal distribution. Now, once again, if we were to check this out, if we took n times p times the probability, that's going to be 60, right? Okay, so we take, n times p, 500 times 0.12 is 60. That's just bigger than 10. If we do n times the failure, so 500 times 8.88, well, that clearly is bigger than 10. So because of that, we can say that, yeah, okay, the law of large counts, large count condition, we got that taken care of there, okay? Now B, use a normal distribution to anticipate that. So the first thing we have to do is find the mean. Now remember, to find the mean of a binomial distribution, we take the number of trials times the probability, that's 60. Standard deviation, we then take that 60, all right, and multiply it by the probability of failure, which is 0.88, take the square root, right, and that's 7.22. So now, to find that probability, we go to the z-table. Remember, we take our mean, which our actual minus the mean. So we're going to take 50 minus 60, divided by the standard deviation. We're going to get a z-score of negative 1.38. Go ahead and look on your z-tables, okay, or you can put it in your calculator. I like the z-table myself, but again, we're going to find out that that's going to be about 8.38% is that probability that 50 or fewer teens have debit cards. All right, so that's kind of what we're cooking for as we go there. So once again, you can use those types of things with the calculator as well. Remember to do that. I like using the z-table. That's just me. I'm kind of crazy, kind of kooky. So we've got that. All right. Well, that takes care of that part of 6.3. We have one more part that we'll start talking about geometric random variables. We'll get to that next. But until then, I'm Mr. Boone.